Ladies, it's
Good to see
such a
everyone.
pleasure to see you guys. Yeah, it's actually been so. If anyone's watching this and is like, do they talk all the time, like offline in between these catch up conversations? The answer is no. We last chatted in 2020 when the world was crazy. And I don't know if it's less crazy necessarily. But anyway, here we are 5 years later, and we haven't talked all together since, except for little catch ups here and there. So I'm so excited to chat with you. It's so weird. I don't know if you guys know this, but YouTube, they took the Sisterhood, they took our show off of YouTube and then they just put it back on. But it's like, it's not, it doesn't say like episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like future nun caught lying, but it's like the whole episode. It's so, have you guys seen that?
Huh. Yeah.
No,
It's,
no.
yeah,
That's so
yeah.
weird.
It's so weird. Okay, do you guys feel like the longer we go, the weirder it gets that we did this thing?
You know what it is? I feel like because we're now in a new generation.
Mm-hmm.
And so the new generation is catching up and they're watching the show because I get I don't want to call them random. I get messages from time to time from students who watch the show and they're like, wow, like you guys are super inspirational. And, so
That's
you
awesome.
have that part, but then you don't know the other side, and the other side, with social media, things, how they want to word it and narrate the way they want to do it. But I think the most beautiful part of this whole situation is that because we experienced it,
Mhm.
we get to tell the story. We are in charge of our narratives and what we went through and what we experienced together,
Mhm.
but, to call it, whatever they want to name it, it's just, that's crazy. It's the world we live in, unfortunately.
It is kind of strange to me. I can look back now, 10 years later. We've all lived a lot of life. And so we're going to be sharing because I legitimately don't know a lot of things about you guys, like apart from what I internet stalk. So I'm looking forward to hearing the real stories. But it is interesting. We've all lived a lot of life. And I think it'll be so interesting in this conversation to be able to go back and see like what were the little threads, what were the things that were happening 10 years ago when we filmed the show that hadn't fully matured yet. And now we're like coming into our own because we're all grown up now. This is great. um,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
And you're a mom now. Like, oh my God, like we're like half of us are moms now. Like
Yeah, multiple with
Crazy.
like
beautiful.
with 8, 9, 12. How many kids?
Yes. So
Maybe
beautiful, by the
between
way.
us.
Yeah.
Oh my God, so beautiful.
Yeah, that would be
Yes.
crazy if I had
Crazy.
like 9 kids in 10 years. We're not on that track. I'm not on that track, but we'll get to that. We'll get to
But that's
that.
what we're here for.
Yes. Who wants to go first is just like a catch up of what you've been up to in the last, I guess we could do the last 10 years, but maybe more a focus on the last 5 years since that 5 years ago we had a conversation.
Uh, so 5 years ago, I was in Sacramento. We've moved a little further north, so we're just outside of El Dorado Hills, which
Okay.
is really nice. We have more like redwoods on our property now, and this little like downhill part of our property that we are turning into what's called the adventure yard for our kids. So I think when we last talked, 5 years, I would have had just one baby. I have
Oh,
four now, all girls. Just had my fourth girl on November 4th. So she's 3 weeks old now.
you look
So we've
amazing.
just
Oh,
thank
yes.
you.
That's crazy.
From
Congratulations.
here up, I'm real
Congratulations.
good. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
Beautiful.
it's been a lot we've had a baby every other year.
okay.
So they're well, my oldest was born December, so she's almost 6. So it'll be 6, 4, 2, and new by the
Wow.
end of the year.
Wow.
So it's a lot to keep up with, but it's a lot of fun too. And I just see how close the girls are and they love each other and they all take turns. Even my 2-year-old now pretends that she's the mommy and my 6-year-old is the baby, and they all play really well together. So I'm hopeful that that will continue as they get older.
That's so beautiful.
That's
And you,
probably the biggest thing is just kids, kids and moving.
Yes. What did discerning religious life, how did that help you in motherhood? Did it help you in motherhood?
Yes. Yeah. Gosh, I don't think I have it up here. It just popped in my head. There's a book about married life, like the conventual life, living in convent being applicable to married life, and how, like, in religious life, in theory, the concept is like you have to be ready to go when the bell rings, like you don't dot your I or cross your T, like you go, because that's supposed to be like, when God calls you, you answer. And it's very similar in my house. When my kids scream, I go. When you wake up at 2 a.m. and the kid is there like heaving in your face, like, it's a lot.
Yes.
Sure. You're all on the same track. You mentioned you've got a
You're really
sibling
selling
at the
us on
moment.
motherhood here for those that don't
Yeah.
have kids. You're
I
really selling it, Christy.
it's so good. No, I mean,
Oh,
yeah, it sucks sometimes for sure. And it's stressful. And with my not my current pregnant, or not my last baby, but the baby before, my now 2-year-old, I got like prenatal depression. I know we saw some of that on the show too, with like depression, anxiety. It's just a thing in my world. Um, but it like hit really hard to the point where I could not get myself out of bed for more than 45 minutes. Um, so that was a huge challenge, and a lot to overcome. We were very fortunate that both of our families live close by. So they helped us a lot. My parents came and his parents came. They kind of worked out a schedule and watched the kids while I slept, basically, and adjusted. I got medication and got the help that I needed. Um, but that was really big. And I think that having that time and discernment, that time, our kind of journey through the sisterhood, and um just acknowledging the need to surrender to what God has for you now. I think despite the hardship that motherhood can be, like, it's also our calling, right? So just like we say, like, okay, if you're called to religious life, you're called to religious life, but then there's callings within that. And I think it's the same thing with becoming a wife or becoming a mother. Like, there's a calling within that as to, how you're going to example Christ to your children and invite them into relationship. What does that look like without, just like putting it on them, but how do we make it something that they want, that they desire and are pursuing on their own? So there's a lot of little changes. I joke that, like, I don't really go to mass. I'm there, but I'm juggling kids all over, and I just remember that, like, okay, God, this is where you've called me. This is where I'm at. This is where my kids are at in their journey, acknowledging that, like, we're all in different places. And so I feel like it's a win if my kid is talking to me and I can read them a book, and it happens to be a Bible story, and we'll bring different things and talk about religious stuff during mass. So I'm not getting necessarily all the readings for the day, but I am giving that to my kids and making church what it can be for them. So I think it's just a lot of doing what I can, and trusting that God will show me that next step, as it comes.
You know what that
That's
reminds me
so
of?
good.
When there's kids like being loud in church and everyone's always like looking, and like my dad said something, and I always think about this, and tell me if you guys think it rings true. You know that story in the Bible where there's kids and Jesus is preaching and they're like pulling the kids away, and Jesus says, "No, let the children come." I don't know the exact, you guys probably know. I don't know what Bible story that is. But my dad said that. Like, I feel like we were on vacation somewhere, we went to mass, and the kids were being loud, and he said that. Like, that's so great, the kids in the church. Like, Jesus said, let the kids come. And I always think of that now, and I never get annoyed when kids are being noisy, because I always think of my dad saying that. And It's so true, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it is
Yep.
so true because ultimately, I don't know for it's everybody has different experiences, but growing up, I was sometimes limited of just being a kid. And I think it's so important to allow the children to just be because their voices matter. So it's like kids, their minds are like sponges. So it's like if shutting them up, especially in church, what messaging are we conveying to them? So
Yeah.
I think it's so beautiful that you allow them to be, especially in such a sacred and safe space that we call church, and allowing them to be that way there. You give them the freedom to be the same way anywhere they go, and being reminded that God is with them everywhere they go, especially
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Okay, that reminds me, and I have to just share this one little thing because I think it would be awesome for other parents to do if they don't already. But at my church, they have adoration, and the monstrance will be out on the altar. But my girls always want to go back behind the altars where they have the tabernacle in this like small little sanctuary,
Mm.
and they want to go back there. So we will go back and I have them, okay, we kneel down, we say hi to Jesus because I want to teach them like reverence as well and like respecting God, not just being totally crazy.
Yeah.
But one of the things we talk about is the candle that's by the tabernacle that signifies the presence of Jesus and how the flame, flickers. And it's like, oh, it's dancing. I said, Jesus, I think he wants to dance with you. And so they're in front of the tabernacle, like dancing with Jesus. And they're like, look, Jesus is dancing, Mom. And they get so excited and they like do little dance moves. And before we would leave, I'd say, okay, well, let's pray. Do you want to invite Jesus to pray with us? And so they'll like ask Jesus, like, okay, will you pray the Our Father with us? And it's just so cute, like
That's
that
so sweet.
they are having those beginnings of a relationship and like
Yeah.
a shared experience with God, with Jesus, and in whatever way that translates to them.
Yes.
But just letting them kind of be silly and feel like God wants to dance with you. I'm sure he would love to dance with you. Like, go
Yeah.
for it.
That's so
I love
beautiful.
that.
My pastor always says a church where there's or a church where there's crying is a church that's not dying. And
Yeah,
so he's
that's
always, yeah. Of course, every parent is working so hard to get their child to calm down during mass. Nobody wants screaming
Yeah.
at the consecration. It's so embarrassing. And it's so funny because all my friends here, we're all like at the like most of us have 4 or more kids at this point, like 3, at least 3 or 4 or more. And so we always there's this running joke where it's like, oh, you did the walk of shame during the consecration. That made my family look really good. You were the one taking the kid out during the consecration.
Uh-huh.
But it's so beautiful to see
Oh, yeah.
so many young families in mass. And it's like, this is what kids do
Mhm.
at a certain age. Like once they get to be 5, it's age appropriate to say, this is how we behave. Starting at
Yeah.
3 and 4 as well. But like when they're 1 and 2, they just can't. They have no impulse control.
Yes.
And that's beautiful. But like my little 1-year-old, he like blows kisses at Jesus. He calls him Gigi.
Uh-huh.
That's how
Oh,
he
That
says
is so
Jesus.
cute.
It's precious. Yeah, just to see
aw.
the beginnings of
That
those
is so
connections. Oh, Christy,
Yeah.
that's so awesome. I love that you're fostering, like when I think of your spirituality, it's the word that comes to mind is charismatic. And you're just you're heart-led, you're very like you let God lead you by reason, but also so comfortable with that emotional connection that a lot of Catholics aren't. And I love that about your spirituality. So it's so cool to see that you're introducing your daughters to Jesus in exactly as relatable a way as you experience him, which is just incredible. So good job. Keep it up.
Thanks.
Yeah. Let's do a quick catch up. Who wants to go next? Eseni, do you want to tell us what you're up to?
Okay. So 5 years. So 5 years, that was when we had our last interview. So we were in the Bronx. I was living in the Bronx, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I think already at that time I expressed how I stopped drinking. So next month I complete 5 years
Mm.
Wow.
sober, and it has been the best decision that I have done. It it made everything so much clearer for me. Like throughout my journey, I was able to see like who I truly am and my purpose here, because in the past, everything was so surface, which I've discovered, and when you're walking in a surface veil, you're not thinking about your core internal issues. And my way of dealing with that, I was drinking. That was my coping mechanism. And I just said enough. Like I needed more. I wanted to feel alive. I wasn't feeling alive. I was just pretty much dead in the body, and how I was covering that was the makeup and the smiling and, but not having the safe space to be able to communicate and express what's really happening. And at that time, I was already with my partner. We're still together to this day. We're getting married, like we're having our celebration next year.
Oh, wow.
But yes, and at that time of my healing, because she studies shamanism, and she was a part of my healing journey. I was able to share with no judgment. And once I was able to do that, I realized, wow, like this whole time, I developed a relationship with God, but I didn't realize that God was with me the whole time, even through the madness, the journey where I felt like I was alone. It just pushed me into this light where I said that I would never put myself through that again. And so I picked myself up. I started writing. I wrote my first children's book. Yes, I wrote my first
Wow.
children's book. Yes,
That's
it's
awesome.
called Nice to Meet All of Me Again. And I'm super excited. And that was a beautiful journey in itself because as I was writing, I didn't know what it became today. I had no idea. God was right. That was God. Okay. Because there was no way, because my whole idea was like, I wanted to, I wanted to share something, but I didn't know what it was. And this beautiful book that I cannot wait to share is one of the best, greatest gift that God has gifted me, like rewarding me and showing me that you can do it. You can do whatever it is that you could put your mind to, your spirit to, as long as you say your good intentions and we're working together, everything is just going to fall flawlessly. Is everything going to be perfect? Absolutely not. But that's the most beautiful thing because it's a part of your journey. And I got to love and embrace my journey, whether whether it's not going my way, right? Because that was another thing. Back then, it had to be my way. I had to be in control. It has to be this way. And if it's not, then chaos. And I realized, wow, you're doing that to yourself. You're not allowing God to step in and show you that you're not alone. And when I did that, I told myself, I was like, when I put this book out, it's definitely going to be a message, and I can't wait to share it with the kids. The kids are everything to me, because when I did shadow work, I was able to tap into my inner child self. And the things that I wrote in that book, I was like, I wish I would have known this as a child, how to cope with your emotions, your feelings, and vice versa with the parents. That's why it's so important when mothers read to their children, they're receiving the messages as well, because it's like it goes both ways. We learn from our children as well. And that part of my journey was amazing. I took it here when we moved to Brooklyn. I finished the cover. I vowed myself to not do it the easy way out. I thought about getting an illustrator or somebody to like write it for me. I was like, I got it. And God was like, no, you're not. No, you can do it. So I got on Canva and I did it all. And I was like, oh my God, like I really created a children's book. But, I'm so intentional even saying the word I, because it's like, I didn't do this by myself. Like God instilled the words, the pictures, the ideas, the vision for me to just put it into action.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Oh my God, so
Yeah.
beautiful. Like I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about that. And God's just been working. He was like, you have so much to do. He was like, you like back then, looking back at the show, I was like, wow, like you were so hurt and boxed in. Like I was so hurt and I allowed myself to be boxed in within this hurt and pain, when knowing like, no, God got you. You're going to heal from this and you're going to be fine. and you're
Yeah.
going to create and you're going to heal and you're going to heal others and you're just going to create a tribe that is just about God because I'm so intentional with that. Even with my space, if you're not talking about God and everything that you do is not with God, then all love, but it's just we're not in alignment.
Mhm.
Like I take my relationship with God so deeply now
Hmm.
that I amaze myself every day, just waking up with like the things that I just end up creating. I'm like, I didn't know I had that in me.
Hmm.
Like my
Yeah.
love for music, I started DJing and I was like, wow, one morning, it was actually late morning. It was like 12 o'clock in the morning. And this was actually a little before my aunt passed. And I was listening to music and the way that I was just transitioning. And I was like, I think I want to DJ. Like, I want to do something. And it's just not like, oh, look at me, look at me. I really want to be intentional with the stuff that I'm doing. And I took a course with my cousin. Most of my family members are DJs, starting with my uncle. So, just in studying, practicing with them, taking courses. And now I have residency at a nursing home, in which I love.
Oh,
I
cool.
love it. Oh my
That's
God.
awesome.
Like, oh my God, me and my wife, whenever we go, we're there twice a month where they want to make it like three, four, like and we're there and we just bring so much joy to the space and they bring joy to us, because again, like I vow myself that whatever I do, it has to have a purpose, it has to be intentional and it has to feel good and most importantly, safe. Very, very safe. I could go on and on and on, but I am just so grateful for the experience that we all shared because, we were on a different journey, yet we were facing similar things, probably without even knowing, but God brought us there together for a reason. And I'm
Yeah.
so grateful for all of you, like
Oh.
just so grateful, just so grateful.
Yeah. Eseni, it sounds like you've been on such a healing journey, which is wonderful. You
Yes.
look and you
Thank
sound
you.
more animated, and you're obviously just finding so many ways of creative expression, which is so awesome. You mentioned that your partner studied shamanism. So has that influenced you,
Yes.
or do you still identify as Catholic?
Oh, I identify as God's child in every way because because my mom, she still goes to Catholic, the Catholic Church, and with no, I don't stop anybody from practicing what they practice because I see God in everywhere.
Mhm.
I learned and read the Tao. I read about Buddha. Like it's just, I was able to see God in so many ways. But even to this day, I still say my Our Father. I still, I do my sign of the cross whenever I leave my house. So I take my pieces everywhere I go.
Mhm.
And so I think
Gotcha.
that's like the most beautiful like challenge that I'm, still learning every day. And as I'm learning about myself each and every day, I don't, I'm learning to not box myself anymore.
Mm.
I'm like, I'm a believer in God. I'm a child of God. God created me,
Yeah.
in so many ways. Because, I come across people, who study Islam and, so many religions. And I don't want to see them differently. I see God in everything.
Mhm.
And so that's something that I'm learning, each and every day. I'm still learning, but
Mm.
knowing
Yeah.
that the core of God is there is everything to me.
Asini, I like
Yes.
I'm so happy for you to say all this because have such strong memories. And actually, I feel like I haven't thought about this in a long time, but like I have such strong memories from us being on that show and you just like being there for me on such a deep level. And like, I know you're only just a drop older than me, but you had such a maturity when we were on the show that I felt like I saw this in you. Like, I didn't see you as um boxed in. I always saw you as intuitive and I tried to communicate that with you and I did I always was like wanting you to see yourself as I could see you. And
Mm.
I feel like we had so
Wow.
many moments like that where you sort of did, but I felt like I held you in such a high esteem just because you were there for me on such a deep level because I
Mm.
was like going through so much on that show and even after,
Yeah.
you know? And so I'm so happy because I never saw you as boxed in. I never saw you. I always saw you as reflective and mature and in tune with your, I mean, really, like,
Mm.
and that's why I feel like we did form such a bond. Like, you're gonna literally make me cry.
No,
Like I
I
feel
was
like that's
stopping
why we
myself. Mhm.
like formed such a bond because, and that was really real. And people always ask me, like, is that show, was that real? Like, there was a lot of really real things. And
Yes.
you, I really, and you all were like so
Yes.
have added so much to my life from that show that I'll never forget. But just because you're saying that, I just wanted to reiterate that to you.
Wow.
And
Wow. Thank
Francini.
you.
and also my
Wow.
grandpa always loved you and
Oh
you
my
would always
God.
like he loved you so much and it's so perfect. I can only imagine now you're with like all of these seniors. They must go great.
My
My grandpa was
great.
obsessed with you. So, because Eseni worked in my grandpa's dermatologist. So it was like they had their own separate bond like outside of me.
Yes, yeah, it was the oh my God, he's the best. Oh my God, I just love him so much. But it's I thank you for that, because it shows, I was always, a giver. I always made sure people were good first before I was good. I made sure like, okay, wait, no, I'm gonna put my stuff to the side because I want to make sure they're good first. Because I'm an empath. So, if you're going through something, especially if you're my friend, I'm going to show up. I'm going to make sure you're good. Whatever you need, we're going to figure it out. But I've learned to also, I have to make sure that I'm good first before I show up for others. But I didn't know that. I never practiced that in the past and making sure, check in, make sure you're good. Did you talk to God? Did you check in? That was the first time I experienced my anxiety attack was there. I had no idea what I was experiencing, but
Mhm.
what I had inside, I had so much fear, and you would have never thought, because I kept it inside, covered it well, just all right. We're gonna get through the day. But internally, I was scared out of my
Right,
mind,
right.
So, but it just showed, like, even in the midst of that, like, God is
Right.
just
And we would
there.
always like have those talks at night. Like me and we would always like
Yeah.
have our like little debriefs at night. And I'll
Yeah.
never forget that.
Yeah.
That's so
Oh, I
awesome.
love you.
Uh, Francesca,
Yes.
maybe you can fill us in next, but I wanted to throw a little invitation your way real quick, Eseni, because
Yeah.
I know, I mean, I'm like so happy for you. It's so beautiful to see how
Thank
alive you are
you.
and how
Thank
much more
you.
integrated. That's the word that is coming to mind. Is like you seem so integrated and so at peace, which is beautiful. And I still attend mass every Sunday. I still, my faith is, my Catholic faith specifically is super important to me. And I think it's so beautiful you've crossed that bridge to seeing God in everything and thinking of yourself as a child of God. What a treasure. But I also just wanted to invite you back. If you ever like feel like, maybe, the doctrine in the church that about the Eucharist or confession or, any of those like issues, like if that wasn't ever explained to you well, I would love to chat with you if you ever have questions or thoughts
Yes.
about that, just because I just want to make myself available
Yes.
because we're here to catch up.
Yes.
We're here to catch up. We're not here
Absolutely.
to necessarily, unless you want to get into doctrine or whatever. But
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, I just want to invite
Absolutely.
you
No,
back
like
to the Eucharist.
please, yes, let's
Yeah,
do it, because I feel like we have to have more of these conversations,
yeah, yeah.
because growing up Catholic, you have the Catholic Church, and I went to Catholic school. But there wasn't that space,
Mhm,
to have a
mhm. Yeah,
conversation,
yeah.
to talk about it. Let's go deep. It was never that. It's
Mm,
just
mhm,
Sunday, go to
mhm.
church, uh, you say your prayers 1 hour, and that's it. The day is done.
Yes.
Then you go to school, regular day. You don't go to mass every day, but when you do, it's the same thing that I see every Sunday. but there's no one there sitting next to me and say, did you know what you just heard right now? Did you hear what the word just what was the word that was expressed just now? Or how do you feel? Do you have any questions? Because I had so many questions.
Yeah.
But when asking, it wasn't no connection. And maybe that's why we're here today, because I feel like we do have to have more of these conversations, because there's so many questions. So many questions.
And there's also a lot of distinctions among different faiths. And there's I've had, because I was living in New York City when we met and all of that, I've had to really kind of grow in my own faith and not just do all the Catholic things because this is what we do, but I've had to ask myself, why do I believe this specifically? And what is it that actually makes me hold on to this particular faith and cling to it? Because it's too easy to just fall away now. And so, if you ever have questions about anything Catholic related, that is like, you feel like wasn't explained to you, I want to, just extend that invitation, because I think we have such beauty, especially with the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. And that's just something that really keeps me in the Catholic Church specifically. So I just wanted to put that invitation there to you. And, we have each other's numbers, so call me anytime. But it's so good it's so good to see you looking more just comfortable in your own skin. That's how you look. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you so much. I mean, healing is beautiful, and it never ends, but
Amen.
the more you just continue to talk to
the
most beautiful high, it's just everything is just,
Amen. Francesca, do you want to give us your update? How you doing? What have you been up to for 5 years?
Well, the last time we talked, my dad had unfortunately just passed away to COVID.
Yes.
That right before we had connected. And so everything from that then essentially changed for me. And I had discerned so many things in my life, like everything, all my priorities changed. And it was really, really hard. And it still remains extremely difficult, but I've made some solid choices to cope with, that loss, because I think you might remember that, like, how close I was with not just my family, but my dad in particular. So we had a really, really particularly close relationship, and the way he passed away was really traumatic. Like, he passed away alone in the hospital, like during COVID. It was so, so, so traumatic and awful. And, being particularly close with him, it was just like, the whole, everything I was doing just lost meaning. So I had got my, BFA in acting, and I was acting, and I was in sales, and I had all these career things that I was pursuing, and it all essentially lost meaning, and I didn't know what I was doing. And that was I think that was the summer that we spoke. So I sort of basically let everything go and I took a 2-month trip to Italy, because I had never been there before, and that was always my dream. And me and my dad were supposed to go together actually in 2020. And so I just dropped everything, quit everything, went there for 2 months by myself. And that was probably the greatest thing I ever did. And I loved it. And then in the interim of that, I had picked up his charity. So my dad had a charity called Homes for Veterans, and he was doing that sort of on the side of his, regular full-time job. And at Homes for Veterans, we adapt homes to make them accessible for veterans. So we go in, we pull out bathtubs, we do ramps, anything to make homes accessible for veterans. But my dad was essentially doing that just in New Jersey on the side, like a project or two a year, on a very small scale. So I went to Italy, I was pursuing Homes for Veterans, and I didn't really know, anything besides that, what I really wanted to do. But I did truly feel like that became my calling, because I felt so much peace and satisfaction in not just helping the veterans, but within the veteran community, because veterans and servicemen and women, they have also experienced so much sacrifice, so much loss, you know, a lot of grief, PTSD. And I felt like I was grappling with a lot of those things. And when you're an actress or you're selling liquor to bars and liquor stores, people like not everyone is really going through that kind of thing. And it felt so superficial. It was like I couldn't go back to those industries. It was really, really tough. I felt like I couldn't relate to anybody. And in the veteran community, it was like so satisfying because I felt like, well, I didn't serve, but this is my way to give back as, you know, a civilian to these men and women who have given so much, who have given limbs, who have sacrificed their mental health, their physical health, but also to remember my dad and continue on his legacy in this incredible way. So now not only do, you know, the people of New Jersey know the great things that he did, but now everybody I talk to will always know his story and everybody will remember him. And what is a greater gift that I can give him than, you know, continuing on his memory? I mean, what are we here for, right? Like, what more do you want? That's why you have children too, right? That's to continue on your memory and your legacy. So that's like almost my job as his child. And I feel like it gave me so much gratitude. So I had other jobs, you know, on top of that. And I kept pursuing Homes for Veterans and it was growing and growing. And I've grown it so much. So now we went from being in like, I think we were in maybe 2 or 3 states. My dad had, you know, sort of been in, and now we've completed projects in 19 different states. And
Oh my gosh.
That's amazing.
Thank you. And we've invested over $1 million into simply into construction. That doesn't count all the other things that I've now since added to the programming, but in the last 3 years. And I've, you know, grown a big, nice, amazing, supportive board. And you know, I've partnered with some really big companies and like Home Depot and stuff, which was, you know, I've set those kind of small goals to try to reach those kinds of things. And I feel really happy doing that. And I do feel like this is my calling because it's a combination of my sales background, you know, like raising money. So I feel like I'm using that skill, but for a good thing instead of selling alcohol, which I was good at, but, you know, it wasn't quite as satisfying as this. And, you know, and I can still use some of my acting skills, you know, because I have to do public speaking and I have to talk to people and I used to have that confidence, you know, so if I have to make a speech or whatever, you know, I never feel shy, obviously. So all of those skills I can still put into practice, but I've really been just giving this my all. Like I just got my CFRE. It's like a certified fundraising executive. It's like a certificate you get to be a professional fundraiser. I got that over the summer, which I was I know no one knows what that is unless you're like in philanthropy, but I worked really hard to get that certificate. And yeah, so I just feel like I love philanthropy and I've joined other things. Like I'm in the Columbus Citizens Foundation, which is a, you know, an organization that raises money for the Italian children and, you know, underprivileged Italian children to give that, or not necessarily even underprivileged. It just is to preserve the Italian heritage and to give back to scholarships and things for the Italian community. So I'm super involved in that. And, you know, I did Meals on Wheels and I try to volunteer as much as I just love giving back. And every time I meet people in that space and in the volunteer space, they all have a story. You know, everyone has a reason. Everyone has something that happened to them. And I just meet the best people ever. And I love it. I love it. And that I do really feel like is also so divine intervention because I leave it up. I always say, you know, it's my dad, but I actually had a really good conversation with a girl who also has a nonprofit, and she kept saying, you know, I leave it up to God. I leave it up to God. And I just had this like great meeting with her, and she was saying, she's heavily influenced by Mother Teresa because her organization goes overseas and helps babies with heart surgeries and things like that. And I was like, you know, I always just say my dad is guiding me and, you know, a divine intervention of my dad, but it is so true. Like sometimes I don't know how we're going to get a project done or how we're going to raise the money and I'm just like, I don't care. Like we're gonna do it. We're gonna figure it out. Like I know my dad's gonna lead me in the right direction,
Yeah.
but that is God. And I really feel like this is just what I was called to do because I'll take on any project. Like I will get it done. And yeah, so that's just what I've been working on.
So the girl
That
you
is
just
so impressive.
it is. It's incredible. Wait.
Thank
But
you.
something pinged in my brain. The girl you were talking about who's devoted to Mother Teresa, who goes overseas for babies' heart surgeries. Is her name Lauren?
Yes.
Is
Yes.
she a
We go to the
tiny
same church. Yeah.
I know her.
I know. I know you
Yeah.
know her. I know Lauren Castibule. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and she's
She has an
Italian.
organization called Array of Hope.
Yes. Yes. I did some
Are they
videos for
Italian?
them.
Are they Italian? Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Are they
They're
Italian or Spanish?
I think they're Italian.
Castibule? I'm not sure.
Hmm.
But we
I
are
thought
both small.
you are both
Yeah.
small, dark-haired, beautiful
Yeah.
Italian looking to me.
Yeah.
I thought she was Italian.
I just saw her. I
Okay.
just literally, and she was saying like, we were talking about the show, you know, she was like, I recognize you from the show. And I was like, that's so funny. But we actually go
Yes.
to the same church. And then she mentioned you because she said you interviewed her or something,
I
right?
did.
At some point.
I had her on my
Her name
podcast.
Ray of Hope?
Yes, I had her and her dad on her podcast on my podcast because they are in ministry work together. And then they invited me to their gala, which was really cool. I
Yes.
got to meet some amazing people. There were like ice sculptures. I mean, it was like the fanciest thing
Yes.
I've ever been to. And
Yes.
then yeah, and their family band sang and all of that. It was really cool. And then I did some videos for their YouTube channel, so that was pretty cool while I was there.
They're very similar to you too. Cause like,
Yeah.
and that's why me and her were like having such a good conversation because she
Yeah.
also was like in the performing art. There was a lot of things that I didn't realize too that was really similar.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we were just talking about like a lot of things that we had in common.
Yes.
But I really felt like, again, that just us meeting up recently realign my brain with that stuff. And I just went home to my mom and I was like, you know, she kept saying God, like, and I'm like, that made me realize that again. You
Yeah.
know, like that really is what it is. Sometimes you're just
Mhm.
doing stuff and you do have to like reconnect for a second.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can get really over busy. You know, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not ashamed to admit that. Like
Yes.
I don't always like I'm not always in the right mindset with stuff. But
Yeah.
then yeah, if you have your heart open, which I always try to have my heart open to my faith, and that is always the most important thing to me, no matter how busy I am, then he will put something or someone in your path to realign you and like realign you and reconnect you.
Mhm.
And it happens often if you're
Yes.
open to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Have you ever heard the quote? It's a very famous Pope St. John Paul II quote, man cannot find himself except through a sincere gift of self.
No.
That reminds me of like everything you've just been saying so much because it sounds like the purpose that you've discovered in your mission is giving your life so much depth that you didn't have before. And I love that. I love that you're living from that
Yes.
place instead of like it's just so easy. It's my default. I think this is, well, I don't know if you guys feel this too, but like we've all made a lot of progress and in our lives. And like when we were filming the show, we were in our early and mid 20s and the focus was all on what do you want? What do you want with your life? And I just felt like it was from a very secular perspective, even though I so appreciate that they made sincere and true attempts to really give us an honest discernment. But I don't remember like, I mean, I was learning the lessons from the sisters that really we need to surrender to God's will. And that also, I didn't know this at the time, but like God's will and our will at the deepest level is one and the same. That's been the most exciting
Right.
discovery of probably my life is that our will is not opposed to God's will. In fact, I just read a writing of Saint Therese and it was so simple. She was like, God only put those deep desires in your heart so that he could fulfill them. Like he's not going to give you these deep desires and then not fulfill them, which is like, it's so simple. But I didn't know that at the time. And I don't know if you guys feel this way. What I was saying a minute ago was just that it felt like on the show, everything was so focused on us And I think it's so great that like where my vocation has led me is that I'm just not thinking about myself all the time. It's like such a better environment to be in. It's such a better way to live, to not just be thinking about like, what do I feel like doing all the time, but to have that mission that you're giving yourself to. And, Franchesca, that's so awesome that you're like, you're giving of yourself and giving to others. I mean, it's so beautiful. How do you feel like the show impacted your vocational discernment? Where are you with all of that? I know it's been a rough 5 years, so I'm sure that that's just been a hard thing.
Yeah. Well, um, no, yeah. Well, that side has always been my heart. My job has always been the easy one. But yeah, vocationally, I'm becoming a nun. No, I'm just kidding. Imagine. No,
I would have been like, oh my God, I got to hear it right now.
They would take you. They would take you in a second. Oh my gosh, go to the Carmelites. They would love you.
never off the
Oh, the
table. No, I wasn't literally engaged. I was engaged. I was engaged last year, and I was engaged for a year, and it just didn't work out. So
I'm
that
sorry.
recently ended. That's okay. It was my choice ultimately. I just didn't think it was right. Um, if Gavin watches this though, oh my God.
We're
But
here for you. I mean,
I
it's live, and this is a safe space and a
yeah,
transparent
no.
space, so yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was and still am, ready to be married, and I think I would be a really great wife and mother, and I was ready for that. So it just didn't work out, but I was ready for that. That was really where I was headed. I think having Homes for Veterans had given me so much, and I've worked really hard, so I felt like I was ready, and I still would like to do that. So we'll just
Beautiful.
see.
Yes. I'll keep praying for you because
Yes.
I know the
Yes.
waiting and the direction changes can be so exhausting. And yeah,
Mm.
I mean, I'm sorry it didn't go, it didn't work out, but at the same time, like it sounds like it wasn't supposed to, which is over time, like it sounds like you're just going to be so
My
glad. I can't say for sure, of course, but you sound at peace talking about it. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's, obviously really hard.
yeah,
And I think that what I would like to say, since this is like a public thing, and I've always been really open and an honest person and just really open. And I just would like to say that if you are someone out there that's in an engaged and you're in a relationship and it's not right for you, don't white knuckle it. Like, do not settle and white knuckle it and do something just because you have saved the dates and you have a date set. Don't do that.
Or if you've put down all the deposits and people bought plane tickets. I
Yeah,
called off my first engagement 2 weeks before the wedding date.
I didn't know that.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, I didn't
So,
know that.
yeah.
Wow.
And
So,
did you
and
regret it?
no,
No,
no, I mean, it sucked.
it sucks. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no
Yeah,
better way to say it. I mean,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Wow.
It was a definitely a difficult decision and a
yeah,
hard conversation to have, and a lot of phone calls. Thankfully, my mom was really helpful in like calling people and letting them know
yeah.
what was going on. But yeah, I mean, that was a minute.
And then
But
how long from when that happened did you get married to your husband now?
uh when well, so that happened prior to the sisterhood.
Oh, right. Now
So
that does sound familiar.
Yeah.
Right, right.
and then I ended up meeting my now husband just a few months after I left the convent. So I left the convent in, I think it was August. And then I met my husband when I was working at a retreat center and he was on retreat and in December. So it was just a few months. I met
that's
him
a
and then
great way to do it. Get a job at a retreat center.
I was very jealous of you when I was in the convent and you're like, oh, I met this guy and everything like was like bam, bam, bam. And I was like, how come that can't be me, God? Like, how come I can't just meet a guy and like and
Oh,
know? And it was Yeah.
It was so fast. In fact, I visited you, Christy, while you were in the convent in June. So you left in August, but you were questioning things at that point. And I was telling you about
Yeah.
my husband, John, and we'd only known each other for 2 months at that point. And then we got engaged 3 months after that. We got engaged in
Yeah.
September, which I think,
Uh-huh.
and maybe this is like, I don't know what's going to happen, Franchesca, but like, I just felt like with my husband, we knew each other 5 months and we were long distance our entire relationship until we were married. And I just felt like after the we got engaged so fast. We just knew it was so quick. I feel like once you get to a point where you know yourself well enough, you don't have
Mhm.
to like you can skip a lot of the intermediary stages maybe because it's like either this works or this doesn't, you know? So
Right.
Well, and to that
yeah.
end too, like talking about discernment and like how our discernment on the show has influenced our life. Like
Yes.
I such a big part of discernment is just learning to hear God's voice, just
Yes.
learning to hear him speak
Mhm.
in your life and in your heart and to recognize it. You say, I know my father's voice. Like, do you know God's voice? Do you know how he talks to you in your life? Because I can tell you, we didn't get engaged 5, 6 months after we met, but I knew 2 months after meeting my husband that he was the person I was supposed to marry. And I remember talking to my spiritual advisor at the time. I was like, I don't even know if I like him that much yet. Like, I don't, what is it? But I had this like deep sense of peace that like this is the man that I'm meant to be with. Meanwhile, he was still kind of discerning religious life and like talking to a religious order. And I remember kept sending him, I was like, you should go spend the weekend with them. Don't visit me. Go talk to them and figure it out. Because it was so frustrating. I'm like, I don't get it. Like, I feel like you're the person for me, but he didn't seem to have that same like recognition off
Mm.
the bat. So
Mhm.
it was a little bit of a purgatory for me and just had to continue waiting and trusting that like
Yeah.
one way or another, like God is going to work it out. Like
Yes.
God's going to direct me. And maybe I misunderstood something. I don't know, like willing to say like, maybe I'm wrong. It's not that, God misled me, but maybe I misunderstood. But I didn't. I'm married now and I have 4 babies and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
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 Well,
It's a lot of
I mean,
things,
you
but you have the
do
mission
know,
too. So
like,
it is wonderful.
yeah,
Yeah.
you do know, like, you really do know. And you know, I knew what I wanted and I was having concerns and sort of waiting and like, and things were concerning and you just sometimes are hoping. And yeah, I was praying about it and I was like, like show me the way here.
yeah,
And I really actually I did I started our pre-Cana like before everything because I thought
Mm.
that would be like helpful. I was like,
yeah,
let's do pre-Cana, like let's get help essentially. So that was a red flag. It was like that red pre-Cana shouldn't have been like a last
yeah,
resort. But and that was that like pre-Cana is huge. Like again, like why faith is so important. Like for me, I like lost my dad, for me the sacrament was so important. It really really was. And I know like that might sound corny to people that are not
Mhm.
religious, that are like, they just want to get married in a church and they just do the pre-Cana to get it over with. Like, I was like, I want to take this serious. Like, I need this tool. Like, I need to use this as a tool. And,
yeah,
it showed me a lot. Like it really did. And then after that, I was like, all right, like just, it was only a few months after that where I was like, and then when I called, I don't know if we can put this part in, but when I called my priest to cancel the church, and I'm very close with my priest, and he was like, you know, I'll tell you guys some more off camera, but he basically said, I was praying for you to make the right choice. Like I would have married you either way, but I was praying for you to make the right choice, and I'm
Mm.
glad you've called me because I was like embarrassed, obviously. Like
yeah,
it was hard to make that call, like,
Mhm.
and I was like,
Yeah.
really? And he was like, yeah. He said, your dad, I think, stepped in to have this
Mhm.
choice. And so that has actually even though, like you said,
Yeah.
it's very hard, that conversation with my priest has given me a lot of strength through this.
A lot of
Mhm.
peace too, I'm sure, because
Yeah.
that once you make that decision, it's the rest of your life. And
Yeah.
it's,
And so
yeah,
I
it's
felt so
good.
validated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how people don't have, I don't know how people go through life without faith. Like there's so many things that I've just,
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
been like almost like a life or death with it.
Yes.
Well, and you
Because
show such good judgment too in that, because some people, you talk about like you were just like waiting to like, hopefully this will fix it, this will fix it. And some people think that, the ring on their finger and the walk down the aisle is the thing that will fix it. And I was that same person. And I remember prior to that engagement thinking like, how do people end up in these awful marriages with like abusive husbands and like all these different issues? I'm like, how did you marry that? Like you had
Right.
to know there was some warning. I know there was.
Yeah.
And that may not always be true, but for me there definitely was like those red flags. And it was that like, okay, like we've taken the step and like, okay, I'll get there. Like it'll be better. It'll be better when.
Right.
And like the reality is that's not if you're in that place where you're like, it'll be better when,
It's
that's
actually going to
not the
get
time to
worse.
get married. Like,
Yeah. It's actually going to get
if this
worse.
is your
Yeah.
person, go to counseling, try to work it out, but don't get married thinking it'll be better when.
Mhm.
Mhm. Oh my God, I'm so glad
Solid.
that
Out
we're having
first.
this conversation.
Yeah.
It's so real. And, especially now that, especially with young girls, they feel like, oh, the goal is to be married. That's the goal, have the ring and this marriage, like this wedding, right?
Right.
But not really understanding the core of marriage and what that really is. Really getting to know this other soul that you're committing to, like everybody is all God's children. Like there's no denying that. But we have to get to know like who this other soul is too. And like it's just oh my God, you guys just I'm not sure if I ever share this. But this is probably my first time. Before the show, like I was married before. I was young. I was
Really?
engaged at 19, married at 20, and
Oh, wow.
months later, almost
Know
to a
that.
year, I was divorced. Yeah.
Wait,
And that's
not
something
to
that
Darnell?
no, this was before
Okay.
Darnell.
Oh.
Yes, this was before. This was like, my family knew, like
Yeah.
his family knew, it wasn't, something like shared. One, I was young. My mother was not for it. And, but I just, because I was so sheltered, that was my way of saying, oh, I want to grow up, so my way, I got to get married and that's it. And when I got married, the first person who I called? I was like, Mommy, I want to go back home, please. I want to go back home. Like, I didn't understand. Like, I just thought, the thought of, being a young wife and, you're going to have this beautiful wedding, the veil and the dress, the surface things, but, I wasn't, I can't put the blame on anyone because I was already of age. My mom was like, if this is what you really want to do, then I'm going to be here for you. But as a mother, even myself, I felt that this was not the right decision to make. As I was walking down the aisle, I was crying of fear. Like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, what? And everybody looked at her like, oh, she's crying. Look at her. She looks so beautiful. And I'm just there like, oh my God, what am I doing? And so it's so important to follow that intuition, and intuition is God. God give us the messages every day. Everywhere we go, the messages are there. But as in this human body, we feel like we're in control of certain things, and we feel like how you guys said, oh, we could change the situation. We could pray that they become better and all this stuff. And it's like, be grateful that it's being shown so that okay, this is for me, or this is.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And when you add children into the mix, you don't have to be healed from everything, but you got to be working on your stuff, because you have to be aware, you have to be open, you have to be honest, you have to be working on it, because children add so much joy and stress into the mix. Because if you want to know who you really
Then you
are,
have to help them deal with their stuff.
exactly. And if you want to know who you are, try living a year on 3 hours of sleep a night and see, and that'll tell you who you really are. I thought I was such a nice person. Like I was like, oh, I'm so kind. That's how I felt about myself. And then I became a mom.
patient.
So patient.
Uh-huh.
Again, not really selling
Yes.
motherhood to whoever's watching here, but it also is though, like it casts the light of truth. It reveals all the ways that you do need to improve that you otherwise wouldn't know. And that's actually really good, even though it's also very hard. I want to, okay.
Yeah, but
So-
thank you for being transparent.
Oh,
And we
I
love
have
you,
to be.
Francesca. I just want
Yes.
to tell you I love you. And I'm
I
so
love you
sorry for
too.
everything. But you deserve whatever God is
You have to do
creating
it the
for
cool
you.
way.
Oh my
Right?
God.
Isn't it
Is
that
this
It's
how
now?
just
people,
there.
is this what the kids are doing?
Am I supposed to
know.
splay my fingers or are they together? Is it
I have
that?
no idea.
At the
Do you remember teaching us all the cool words, Francesca?
no.
What was
We're
it?
all-
Dank was the word
Yes.
when we were there. It's like, that's not what you think it means. It doesn't mean the same thing.
We're all dusty
Anyway.
old millennials
I don't know
now.
what I would want back then. That was
No,
crazy.
I hear people talking about Riz.
No, we're not dusty.
Riz.
I would not claim that in the name of Jesus. We're not dusty.
I love that. Yeah, my brother's 16. He was telling me all about Riz, and I was like trying to use it in a sentence. Tried 10 times, couldn't do it. Couldn't do it right. He was like, you're not, don't try. And I was like, okay, never mind. Because like I speak to teens sometimes. This is like so embarrassing to me. I speak to teens sometimes, and I was like, I'm not going to try. I'm going to be timeless. I'm not going to try to do, it's so awkward when someone who's like,
It's so cringe.
it's so cringy. And I was like, no, we're not trying that. But I was just doing it for fun with my brother. Like, wait, Riz? What is the heck? And I couldn't do it. And I was like, okay, good thing I'm not trying when I go to give my youth talks, because that would be embarrassing. Christie, you mentioned something about hearing God's voice. And I want to just put a little bookmark in that thought, because I actually have something really exciting coming up that has to do exactly with that, and about learning to hear God's voice in your life. But I want to put a little cliffhanger there, because I really want to hear from Claire, because we haven't heard from you yet. And I really want to hear your update.
I apologize for all the shuffling. The sun has been going down over the course of our conversation. So I went from having enough window light to being like, I got to turn some lamps on and be a shadow in the dark over here. But it's been really fun to, well, first of all, see all your beautiful faces again, and just to hear how much has happened in everyone's stories. I often feel like 10 years ago, like the show in particular, it was kind of like this dusky chapter of life, because so much has happened since then. And it cracks me up when people will like still come up to me and ask about it and bring it up. I mean, in the last 2 years, I've had it at least a handful of times in grocery stores that someone says, do I know you? And then I my first thought is that they just know me from the Catholic community and from my very visible role as a choir director at the, because people will come up to me in Walmart and like greet me by name, and then I'm just like, you're from church, right? So, but then sometimes in grocery stores, it's not been that. They finally comes out, they're like, wait, I saw you on this show. And anyway, it cracks me up. And then what really cracks me up is when someone will be like, you look just the same. And I'm like, that's really kind, because I absolutely do not look the same. I've aged so much in 10 years.
No,
You
but
look
anyway,
beautiful, and you look more
do.
beautiful
Yeah,
than
you
ever.
do.
Your hair is
Oh, that's
killing
so
it.
kind.
Yeah, your hair
Your
is
hair
slaying.
is always
It
been
needs to be
just
washed, but
amazing.
we'll roll with
Yeah.
it. That's very kind.
Can we say it has Riz? It has never mind. We're done. We're just gonna go.
I don't
With
even know what Riz means. I think
it's like
completely
charm.
illiterate. I'm completely illiterate in the daily evolution of our young generation lingo. Some of my choir students have tried to educate me, and it changes so quick. You just can't keep up. But my most recent, actually very sweet and endearing story of someone was a mom of one of my youngest choir students, because I work with 4 years old all the way up, all the ages up through professionals. And so my little preparatory choir for this school year, the night of the parent meeting kickoff, the mom is, we're chit-chatting and she's like, "Oh, I gotta tell you, when I was in college, I was at Catholic University of America, and you know what I'm gonna say?" And I'm thinking, I don't. She goes, "We had this really special event in our dorm one night, and it was like this sneak peek preview, and it was your show." And she's like, and now here she is, she's a mom with like 4 kids, and her daughter's my student, and she's just tickled pink that like I'm her daughter's teacher now. Anyway, it was
Awesome.
very sweet. But
That's cool.
I know the last time, well, first of all, it's really fun to hear about Christie's. Do we call it a gaggle of girls? Like you just have a brood of. When you were talking, I was thinking about Saint Zelly Martin. I'm like, maybe she's gonna be like Saint Teresa's mom and have all these girls, and then some of them are gonna become nuns.
My husband would love that.
And then I know, yeah, Stacey, I've gotten to see your baby pictures as they've come out, and just the way that to hear you both share about the journey of motherhood and your marriages and how much both beauty and sacrifice is in it. It resonates a lot, because even though the Lord called me on a different path, the one thing that I definitely have learned, like every vocation shares in common, is a pouring out in sacrifice of one's very self and being. And that means it's usually way more intense than we ever pre-imagined it would be. And it also means there's way more depth and beauty than we ever pre-imagined it would be.
Yes.
And last time we all caught up, I know it was summer of 2020, and I was just a few months away from my consecration. So that's the ring of the Bride of Christ that Bishop Olmsted put on my finger that August. So August 22nd was the day in which I was mystically espoused to Jesus, and as a consecrated virgin, which a lot of people have never heard of that, even people who like are lifelong Catholics, because it's less well known than sisters or nuns, even though it goes all the way back to the earliest days of the church. So that part has always been very neat to me, that it's both ancient and new. If you have ever heard of the names or the stories of saints like Lucy or Cecilia, who's the patroness of musicians, we just had her feast a couple of days ago, or Saint Agnes, the one who holds the lamb. There's this whole long, amazing heritage of women in the earliest days of the church that experienced this particular spirituality of living in the world but being mystically espoused to Christ as his bride. And many of them were then martyred, because for 300 years Christianity was illegal, right? And so much of the time there'd be these Roman nobles or senators or soldiers or even governors or emperors that would decide they wanted to claim, some of these young women as their wife, and they would come back and say, "I can't marry you. I'm already espoused to Jesus, and he is my husband forever, so I can't marry you." And then they'd be martyred. And so we have this huge witness of virgin martyrs. And so now let's see, this brings us to, we're 2024. So I had my 4th anniversary this year since being consecrated, and so much beauty, but also so much intensity has been in that time, because and I often say I think it's really good that we can't see all of the challenges really that are going to come our way, like when we say yes to following the Lord, because if he like really filled in the big picture and we saw how much was going to be demanded of us, we might turn and run the other way. We might be like, I'm not going to sign on for all that. Like we all want the peace and part and the joy part and the love part, but we're like, can't we just have all that without the suffering? And he's like, actually, they're a package deal. And it like Franchesca, like you said, the part of the incredible paradox of faith is that some of these deep pains in our lives, like such a grief as you went through with your dad's loss, and like there's this paradox of how new life and new hope can be born out of those places of grief.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so beautiful hearing your testimony and your story is like out of this place of such loss and pain and grief, there's been this incredible new life that's been born on the behalf of so many because of the legacy he left that you were so moved to step into and then just broaden and expand. And one of the things you kept talking about, Eseni, that's really that resonates with me too, is how just that simple reminder that all of life is continued journey of healing, and that this side of heaven we never fully arrive. There's never a day where we're like we can just sit back and say all the healing work for my mind, body, and spirit is now completed, and I can just coast clear the rest of my days. Like it just doesn't work that way, and yet so much new, so many deep layers can be found and entered into if we don't shy away from that journey. And so some of the biggest external things that have happened since our 5-year call was one, the consecration itself, and then actually no, not even a year, 6 months or so after that. So in February of 21, I was able to buy a house, my first home here in where I live in a suburb of Phoenix. And the way that all came about was just actually kind of one of those where the Lord said, I will lavishly pave a way for you and just kind of pour this out, because I saw the house on Valentine's Day, and my literal prayer to Jesus was, if you want to give me a house for our first Valentine's Day married, I'm really okay with that.
Wow.
And I fell in love with it. Well, what actually happened before that was I thought I was going to buy the place I was renting, and then found out the landlord decided not to sell it. So I was like, oh, okay, kind of bummer, but you must have something better up your sleeve, Lord. I'm just going to believe that. And I went walking that night on a little walk around the neighborhood to see did a really quick search to see if anything in the neighborhood was on sale. And this house had gone on the market like 42 minutes before I looked. And the market was crazy hot at that time. Houses were selling like in one day. But the interest rates were low. So I went on a walk, and then I just like prayed over the property and stood outside this house, and I had a deep sense that the Lord had a plan for it or wanted to do something with it. I just didn't know what yet. And I got to see it the next day, which was Valentine's Day. And in between masses at the parish, went through the entire crash course of the process of pre-approval for the loan and all this paperwork and everything to get an offer placed by that night. And then the next day found out the offer was not accepted. And I was like really bummed because I had just loved it. And so I was like, okay, Lord, you must have something better up your sleeve. And about 10, 12, maybe 12 days went by. And I looked at a couple other properties, but none of them stirred. So I didn't place any other offers. And then I was in prayer about, the middle of the next week. And I realized I was kind of getting myself very, very fixated on like, how's this going to work out? What do I need to figure out? Like, it's kind of time consuming. That whole process is very time consuming. And I just heard the Lord say to me, like, you need to just not try to hold the reins on this and be in the driver's seat and figure it out and just be along for the ride. Okay. So I was like, okay, right. Got it. And, I was like, happened to see on the app that the first property I'd fell in love with was still on the app. So I reached out to the realtor and I said, could you just double check on that for me, please? Because I learned that by now, like the first contract, it would be already passed to the next stage if it was really moving forward. And she's like, oh yeah, I'll check. And then I went to do music for a funeral at the parish. And of course, the gospel was a verse that the Lord had given me the previous time I was looking for a place to live, which is John 14:2, in my Father's house, there are many dwelling places, and I go to prepare a place for you. And that had been my Wi-Fi password, like the whole time at my last house, the one I thought I was going to buy. And then, So I heard the gospel, and that's when I was really able to like lay it on the altar and just have that surrender of, I don't need to figure this out. I don't need to make it happen. I just need to trust.
Yeah.
And I go into adoration and I come out an hour later, and I'm actually with a really good friend of mine at a seamstress's house because she's getting fitted for her bridal dress, and I'm like helping her out. And my phone rings, and it's the realtor, and she's like, your house is available. And I said, excuse me? And she's like, yeah, I just got off the phone. The previous offer fell through. And I was like, well, what do I need them to do to reconsider my nothing? They're going to go under contract with you today. And I was like,
No.
yeah, I was like, Lord, you did one of those, like, you let me fall in love with it. And then you said, would you just surrender it all back to me and be okay with not having it?
That's
And
crazy.
then I'm going to turn around and like give it to you anyway. And then he really gave it to me for my birthday because that was when I got the call. It was like right before my birthday. And then
Oh
he really gave it to me for Easter because they set closing date like Monday of Holy Week. So after I finished all the parish things for Holy Week that year, it was moving in the week after Easter to my home. And it's I call it the Casa Josefina because it's named after St. Joseph because he helped a lot. And I was praying to him in that whole process. And I had the funniest phone call with the like loan officer because he was like, Mame, this is the first house you saw, first offer you placed. Like, do you realize that does not happen? Like, you heard of Willy Wonka, you got the golden ticket. And I was like, it's called prayer. Like,
Yes.
so,
That's so iconic.
That's so cool.
So that was early 2021. And then the following summer, about a year and a half later, I was able to have a small chapel built in the home with permission from my bishop. So the Lord just poured out and provided for all of that too. And so many beautiful people donated labor and materials. And I have all their names by the altar, all the sponsors. And so then it was dedicated and it's completely up to the bishop, as far as like the perimeters for how that would work in the case of any consecrated virgin. But the bishop who consecrated me had gave permission. And so that's the best gift. And it's my place of refuge big time. I rent out the other 2 bedrooms in the home to Catholic young women. So we have kind of an intentional community here. And they're the kind of women the Lord brings here are always ones that are like young professionals or even women in their 30s or 40s that are still in a place of discerning their vocation. So that's been really special. And then that was 2022. That was so the big thing in 2020, got consecrated. 2021, bought a house. 2022, chapel. 2023, departed my parish job that I'd been at for 7 years, which was 2023 was hands down the hardest year of my life. The departure was really tough for me. It wasn't really what I wanted, but a lot of doors were closing and I had to let go. But it was really painful and honestly heartbreaking. So there was a whole lot to surrender and heal from there. And at the same time, though, he mercifully opened a door at the same time. And so I just had to say, okay, I'll let go of everything I've labored for 7 years for here and know that the real ministry is just in hearts and minds. And like the entire effort and prayer program I tried to build, if the rug is pulled out from under it and it doesn't continue, that doesn't mean that my time here was fruitless. It's it's about fidelity, not success, right? Yes. And as Mother Teresa so famously said, and has consoled me many times, but a door opened at the same time, and a parish 15 minutes down the road, the only other Catholic parish here in Gilbert was actually looking to hire someone to build a choir program for them at that exact same time. And so it was another fiat moment, another surrender moment. Like, this doesn't make any sense. This is super hard. This is super painful. Why does it have to be this way? But if this is where you want me to go, then give me the courage to say yes and let go of everything over here that I thought I was going to continue investing in as far as the apostolate and the ministry. And but the house I bought, literally walking distance from the parish I used to work at. It's 15 minutes drive to the new one, so it's not a bad commute. But the place I am now has been a season of springtime for me and a lot of recalibration, a lot of reintegration, and just even detox in a lot of ways. And so I'm really, really grateful. And I honestly, I've said to a couple of friends, just even the last month of my life, I feel like there's a lot more new vitality than I've had in years. I have several autoimmune conditions, so navigating those and dealing with the day-to-day challenges of those has had its ups and downs because it can really compromise your energy levels and your brain clarity, and you're just sometimes in like pain all over all the time. And so trying to say to the Lord on a daily basis, like, okay, please, we answers would be great, but also please don't let me waste any of this in the meantime. Like, please use it for good, for something salvific and redeeming. But just, yeah, really in the last month, I feel like it's like a personal springtime in a new way for me. And I've been now long enough at my new parish, 1.5 years, that my roots that had gotten kind of roughened up there, like I've started to really resettle. And so there's a lot to be grateful for and a lot to kind of renew right now. And yeah, that was a lot, but that's my updates.
I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy for you. Yeah, that's so you're mentioning autoimmune conditions. I've had a thyroid, hypoactive thyroid for years and years now. And when we were on the Sisterhood, actually, you mentioned how people still recognize you. People don't really recognize me because I don't know if you guys knew this, but like I was like taking thyroid medication, but it was never enough. So I was always like 15 pounds like overweight over the healthy whatever BMI. And so when I had my first child, they like doubled my thyroid medication. And just because they're really careful about that in pregnancy. And then I had my baby, and then it was like I was like a different person. Like I didn't have to take a nap every day. Suddenly I wasn't working out as much, anywhere near as much as I did before I was pregnant. But like I used to work out when we were doing the Sisterhood, I would work out like 2 hours a day, and I just like could not get to a healthy BMI. And I would like eat salad, but then I would like binge eat because like my thyroid was like, we need calories. Like it was just crazy. So I actually don't get recognized a lot anymore because I feel like my face looks so different. Like everything just looks different, but I feel so much better. And I think it's amazing. This is kind of like, I brought this up because I empathize with the struggle that's under the surface, that people like look at you and assume one thing or whatever. I was never super overweight, but like I look at pictures of me from then and I was like, wow, like I was different. I looked like a different person, and I had so little energy compared to now. And ironically, like I have 4 children to take care of, and it's like I can actually function on so much less sleep, and I can just like eat a normal amount, and like my body can process the calories without like just hanging on to extra weight. So I'm sorry you've had to go through those struggles. Were you dealing with that when we were on the Sisterhood, or no? Was that afterward?
My first autoimmune condition showed up in my mid-teens, and then by my late teens, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which runs very heavily in my side of the family. So at this point, the Hashimoto's has been in the picture for me for like 17 years. And I think it was really in my first couple of years after, maybe 2 to 3 years after moving here to Phoenix, that a lot of it started to really catch up with me. And I think I had set a pace, like a daily pace and expectation for myself for years that was not sustainable as far as like the spinning plates and the overdrive. And I don't know if you all remember, but people used to, on the show, people were like, wow, these are such long days and this is so tiring. And I was like, this feels like way less intense than how much I normally try to pack in a day. Like I remember thinking that to myself. And I don't say that to sound prideful. I say that because in retrospect, I look back and I'm like, yep, I just had a very a zealous idea of what the output of one person can prudently be. And so I spent years of my life kind of living from that expectation and like constant overdrive. And so wise people had told me for a long time, like, you're going to burn out. It's going to catch up with you. This is unsustainable. And I didn't doubt them, but it wasn't until I like kind of started to hit that burnout wall physically, mentally, that I was like, oh yeah, I have to figure out a different way to like a different MO. And so when I finally kind of started to experience that was maybe in the 2018, 19, 18-ish range.
Mm.
And then kind of like at that point, Stacey, kind of like the opposite of what you just shared is like
Mm.
my body just, even though I like eat super clean and organic and like all the gluten-free, dairy-free things for years at that point, like my body just started inexplicably adding inflammation and weight like
Mm.
without explanation. And it kind of stayed on that for a whole number of years. And then I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia and I have like two skin related autoimmune. So I have like four or five
Mm.
autoimmune related things and they tend to come in clusters. So figuring out the stress management piece, figuring out and just being willing to experiment with different practitioners and like, how do we try another approach to find something to move the needle into a direction where the body doesn't seem like it's fighting itself,
Yeah.
is kind of where I've been at the last several years. And
Yeah.
I think we might have had a few breakthroughs lately. So I'm more hopeful.
Good. Oh, well, I'll keep praying for you with
Wow.
that. It's so interesting as
Thank
as
you.
as all of you are talking, I like relate to parts of each of your stories. Like Christy, you and I both now have 4 children each, so we're doing the mom hustle. And like Franchesca, I had a very hard situation that relates to like some of the heartbreak that you've experienced, and I've also experienced a lot of healing, like you, Eseni, and then also an epic house buying and building journey. So it's kind of cool. Like I'll just give a quick update if that's okay. And anybody who follows my channel may have seen elements of this, but maybe somebody's here who doesn't actually subscribe to my channel and hasn't kept up. So I guess as of our last video chat, I had 2 children and they were born less than a year apart. So they were Irish twins. And I thought that was intense. And it was based on what I knew at the time. And then in 2020, actually, right after we had our catch up, I got pregnant with my 3rd child, my daughter, Honora. And we call her Nora for short. And we named her Honora, which is Honora. That's my great grandma's name. And it's like honor with an A at the end. And so Nora was due in March of 2021, but she was born very unexpectedly in January. And I've shared a lot about this on social media and my blog, but she and I both almost died. I woke up in the middle of the night just bleeding profusely. I had something called a placental abruption, which is like an obstetrician's worst nightmare. So we rushed to the hospital and I had lost a ton of blood, but Nora was so bad that she didn't even really have a heart rate. So they had to resuscitate her for 22 minutes to get her heart rate back. And then she was having seizures. She was on a ventilator. She was she was more dead than alive in the hospital. And she was like, I'd never seen a baby in the NICU before. And I like woke up from my C-section and it was like, I did not know what to expect. But, she was like less than 4 pounds and she was just so tiny and couldn't breathe on her own, didn't move. And then from all of the lack of oxygen, parts of her intestines started dying. So they had to she almost died again. They transferred her to a hospital that had a higher level NICU. And she got her first surgery. That was on January 16th of 2021. And that was really the beginning of like a very, very long series of cleansing and surrender. And when I say cleansing, I mean like God just like ripping out all of the things, all the parts of my heart that I assumed were strongholds and safety nets, and replacing them with other things that I didn't always want and didn't necessarily even see the blessing of until just recently. But she basically ended up staying in the hospital for 4 months, and it was during COVID. So my husband and I were the only ones who were allowed to see her. So I had to leave my 2 and 3-year-old to go see my newborn in the NICU. And they stayed with my mom. We moved out of our house and lived with my parents. And then I would go to the NICU every day and then come back and see the other 2 babies. So my family wasn't all in the same place for 4 months. And my husband was working. He had to eventually go back to work after a couple of weeks because he just couldn't take that much time off. And so he was out here in Winchester, Virginia, and then I was in Manassas, Virginia, and then the baby was in the NICU in Fairfax. So we were all spread out. It was such a hard time of my life. And even coming home after that was really difficult because I had this now medically fragile baby. Nora, miraculously, she's like a miracle. Like she just She will have lifelong disabilities. So she has cerebral palsy and she has a feeding tube because part of what happened to her brain when she lost all that oxygen was that she forgot how to swallow. Like her brain just never learned that. And then she developed a horrible oral aversion from being like deep suctioned so many times in the hospital. So she still has a feeding tube. She still has cerebral palsy, which entails a lot of therapies, occupational physical speech therapy. And then she also, she has a lot of like gastrointestinal issues. So she has neurologists, gastroenterologists. So I've worn a lot of different hats in the last 4 years, almost 4 years since she was born, becoming her nurse, her doctor, trying to coordinate all of the nursing care, the medical supplies, and it just taking on a lot with that. And so really life has not felt, well, has it ever felt calm? No, it hasn't. That's okay. But I've adjusted to more than I ever thought I possibly could. And that time in the NICU really taught me how precious life is and how precious it is to have a healthy body, like just to be able to breathe, to be able to eat. My daughter couldn't, like, because of all her intestinal issues, she never made a dirty diaper for like weeks and weeks and weeks. And it was like, I was just telling her, like, baby girl, if you can give me a dirty diaper, like, I will never complain, I promise. And that's just
That's probably what no parent ever thought they'd be excited about too, right? Like what a totally transformed perspective, because you feel like that's one of the things that most people are like, ooh, and then they just like would never be like excited to have that because it's normal and healthy.
Absolutely.
Hard to interrupt.
No, it's so crazy. It really is. It's been transformative for me. And so we brought Nora home and she made it and she walks now. She's starting to talk. She has developmental delays, but we've had a lot of therapists who support her. She goes to the special needs school for our county and it's wonderful. It's a lot of teachers, a very supportive class. And so that's also been really helpful for me too, to get some more hours to myself. And then in 2022, end of 2022, there was a very exciting 24 hours where I had another baby and we bought land all at the same time. So on December 18th, my little guy, Michael, was born. And that was that was a really hard pregnancy. First of all, because of the trauma from Nora's birth, which I knew was going to be very hard. But then I actually had another pregnancy related, very, very rare condition that it's called an incarcerated uterus. You can look it up. I won't go into all the details here, but basically, if it doesn't get resolved, either your bladder ruptures or the baby dies or both. So it's just it's like a terrible thing. And finding a doctor who could actually help me and even believed that it was a real thing and that this was a problem was really hard. My husband had seen it once. He's a sonographer. So he had seen it one time in the 7 years that he's been a sonographer. And he was like, they need to be taking it seriously. And so I had to switch OBs, all this stuff. So it was like that was a hard, traumatic pregnancy. But once the issue was resolved in the second trimester, everything was fine. So Michael was born in December and he's a delight. Everybody needs a Michael. He is the sweetest, snuggliest little guy. And I do not take for granted the fact that he is energetic. He loves to eat. He is climbing on everything. And he's a joy. He gives me all these like kisses. He's like the sweetest little thing. And he knows he's the cutest thing too. So we love him. So now we have
plenty of full diapers.
So many.
I said
so many. We have an abundance. Oh man. Yeah, and such a sweet little guy. So we're very grateful for him. And then at the same time before I was pregnant with him, I had been really feeling like our family needs to move. A huge part of my healing journey from Nora's NICU stay was gardening, and I wanted a bigger garden. And so that snowballed into looking for land, wanting to start a homestead. And then we eventually found, through the intercession of St. Joseph, 5 acres that were in the exact location we'd prayed for. We asked for 2 to 5 acres and we got 5. We ended up finding a builder whose name was Joseph. He's Catholic, and he was the perfect builder for us. I mean, it was crazy, all these things that happened. So we built this beautiful house that we have no business being in. but it has felt like this gift from God of like, okay, you went through this hard time in the NICU. You had to surrender so much. I'm going to provide for you. I'm going to give you so much more than you ever thought you could have. And I mean, I don't take it for granted again, the amount of self-actualization that this project has been, because building a house is very stressful, but we like got, I mean, it's a dream to be here and I'm loving it. So I also started a candle making business because I was like, why not? This sounds like fun. I'm obsessed with candles, and that's been doing so well. I think I've made over 1,200 candles this fall, which has been crazy.
Wow.
I know it's like
How do
it's
you have time for that? I can barely
well,
keep my house clean and
oh,
actually figure out dinner every night for the whole family. I
well,
can't imagine.
that's where like I don't keep my house as clean as I would like it to be. It's not a disaster, but like it's a
Okay.
trade-off. It's a trade-off. And we also
Yeah.
don't have home cooked from scratch meals every night with sourdough bread that I baked. Like when I'm in candle season, I can do like 80 or 100 candles a day, but we're having pizza. You know what I mean? It's like it's a
Mhm.
trade-off. I also have my older two in
What's
school
in the
now.
homestead? What's
What's
in the
that?
homestead? Like, what does that mean? What do you mean you have a
Yeah.
homestead? Like you're growing like vegetable, like
Yeah, so we will be. We just moved in July. So I brought in some plants in pots, but like we didn't have time to put in the garden and it was like 105 degrees. So like we're not starting a garden this summer. So we're starting a garden now, and I'll see if I can add like a little screenshot on the side when we actually publish the video, but I'll send you guys, I'll text you guys a picture of the garden. We have like a little Saint Therese, like she's underneath an arbor in the back, and we like gave her some climbing roses. And we're like setting up the
Oh,
garden. We're gonna get chickens in the spring is the plan. I really want a milk cow. I really want one.
I
I
love it.
I love
raw
and
this.
I want
milk.
and I
Let's
want
go.
pigs. I want pigs. Like they
Are you gonna
stink,
get a
but
couple
they're so cute.
goats so they can jump on the cow?
So, I mean,
Yes.
that would be flippin' adorable, but we have some friends. So I've been like discerning this for a while. So I've gone to see different people who have the different animals, and we went to see some friends who had goats. And I didn't love the fact that the goats like butt the children. I was like, I don't think I love
Oh
that.
yeah.
Mm-mm.
And they're very naughty. They try to get out. A milk cow is not going to be like, they're not going to be like jumping over fences. They can't,
What
but
about
goats
sheep?
will jump. So sheep, I think would be really, they're not like top of my list, but lamb is delicious. I'll go for some lamb.
Yeah.
So
And then
I
you
would
would
be down.
probably make something with their like their with the sheep skin. Like
The
you would
wool.
probably
The
like sew
wool.
A little
something. Yeah.
bomb
Oh my
jacket.
gosh,
Little
I can totally see Stacey sitting there making her own yarn,
Yeah.
spinning
I
it
could see
all.
No.
that.
spinning wheel.
I could see
Making
that.
cheese from the
Uh,
sheep milk and the cow
So
milk. Yeah.
cheese,
Yes.
I would love to do. My sister is the one who knits, so I would give her the wool. But I'd say top of my list are chickens, first of all, because they're the easy ones. This is okay. So don't hold me to this because, like, I've never owned animals before. So this is all a dream. What I know I love is gardening. I know I love that. And so we're doing the big garden. But it's going to be a continual discernment of like, do we really want a milk cow? Because that's the biggest commitment. But chickens are easy from what everybody says. You just have to get them set up. Pigs are also very easy and they eat literally everything. They'll eat acorns. They'll eat
Mhm.
like I don't know, like crawfish or like I've heard of them eating like shellfish, like um
Mhm.
just the shells like with nothing in them. Like they'll just eat whatever you throw at them.
huh.
Like rotten milk, eggs, whatever, like uncooked
Right.
eggs, just throw it in for the pigs. It's crazy and then they make bacon out of it. So, and then kind of the ultimate would be the milk cow, and then we just have a huge wonderful community here that would love to get like local milk. So we could absolutely do a co-op because you get like 3 gallons a day from a milk cow. It's crazy.
Wow.
At some
Awesome.
some varieties 5 gallons a day, but it depends on how you do it, if you calf share or whatever. So I'm heavily in the research phase right now for all this stuff. It's so fun. And then I guess like the final catch up item I wanted to go back to, because I know this conversation is getting so super long, is I've not talked about this publicly yet, but I am actually I wrote a book and it's being published at the end of March. And it's with Ave Maria Press. And
Yay.
it's actually a huge part of the story is my vocational discernment. And it's called Adventure awaits. How to interpret your desires and hear God's voice. So, what you said, Christie, about learning to hear to God's daily calls, learning to hear his voice day in and day out, and actually recognize what the movement of that spirit is in your heart, his spirit rather is in your heart, has become such a passion of mine, because that's really, if you're going to discern, you have to understand God's voice. Like, how do you know what you're listening for if you don't know who he is, you know? And so that's been a huge, exciting thing. And there's like a hot air balloon on the cover, and there's a story with that. It's just really, that's like a project that I'm both so excited about, and then also just, it's new territory. So I'll just ask for your prayers with the launch, because I don't know how this is going to go. I've never done this before, but I know Ave Maria Press they're really good. They're just really good. I've been receiving books from them for a long time because of my podcast. And I love how they really work for their authors to introduce them to, people who they might be able to talk to for interviews and so forth. So I know I'm in really good hands, and they've been my number one publisher to work with on this. And it fell into my lap. I will tell that story another time on a different episode, because we're like getting so long here. But there was like, I did not even pursue the book. Like, it came to me. And that was part of the reason why I knew I was called to it, because I had no brain space to pursue this. I was like, I felt called to it, but I was not in a place to actually like pursue it myself. And God just made it happen. So it was,
Congratulations. That's really, really great.
Thank you.
You continue to just amaze me with how much other stuff you do besides momming, because I feel like that's about all I'm capable of doing right now. Like, what do you do?
So
I'm a mom. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
I mean, well, first of all, I'm not saying I do any of this well, Christie. And I also don't give my attention to all of my projects all of the time. It's very much then, we fit it in an hour here, an hour there. I have a few speaking engagements a year that I actually get on a plane and travel for, but it's not like I'm speaking every weekend, and it's not like I'm making candles every single day. I'm also not homeschooling anymore, which gives me more time to be able to like just be with my little guy, my littlest, but then have hands free for like candle making and stuff like that. So it all works. And I think this is so important, because like you said, you were saying you're just a mom. I actually really don't love that language for you, because that is so much more than a full-time job. And sometimes I look at my husband and I'm like, I kind of wish that I wasn't called to these other things, because I would feel more right in many ways to focus on motherhood, because it is so much more than a full-time job. But I think this is the beauty of like our particular calls, right? And the way that God has made us is like, I'm trading off some of the homemade meals and the homeschooling and stuff like that for these other calls that I believe God is calling me to. But I still see the trade-off. Like so you're trading off the other things, but you're getting the beautiful quality time and, that really like 100% focus on your children. And this is like, I feel like this is so important for Catholic women, because there is no one prototype. I just heard this quote: there is no one holy Catholic and apostolic lifestyle. Like, there's the church, but there is no one lifestyle that everybody is called to. And Franchesca, if you become a mom and you feel called to continue, the homes for veterans, like, that's going to be a personal discernment. Maybe you will, maybe you'll let it go. Like, it's going to be such a different thing for everybody. I find that when I let go of all of because I did for a time, I let go of everything. Wasn't doing my podcast. I was so sleep deprived. And I found that I was like so angry and depressed that I actually am a better mom when I'm doing all of the things. And my challenge is to just keep them in check. But like, I do believe that I am called to the other things. Not all of them always all the time, because my family has to come first. But like, they all work together as part of the picture. But that's just me. Like, it's literally just me, and everybody, in your heart, like if you have that spirit of discernment, in your heart, like what you're doing is the right thing. And when it's time to add in a little something outside the home or a work from home situation versus like, just really making it your intentionality to like focus on your children. And I think too, I think with special needs parenting, it's so all consuming and there's so much you can't control that you can't provide for all your child's needs. And so it actually is an extremely rewarding thing for me to have a life outside of my motherhood commitments as well, because it feeds me. It helps me to remember that like all these ways that I can't teach Nora how to swallow. She's not ready. Like she still is going to be fed by G tube for a long time. And like if I just focused on that, I'd be so depressed, but if I have other things on the side, I know that that's a ministry too. I'm giving myself partially to that, but also it's like it comes back to me as well. It's so yeah, just that's part of my discernment, of what I'm called to in this particular phase. And my temptation is always to do too much. So I also have to be real with myself about that. And my husband, if my husband's like, Stacey, I think this is going to be too much for our family, I have to really respect him and let it go, because he loves me. He wants me to do as much as I can, but he also is like, sometimes he'll tell me, and I have to take that as like, okay, this is God speaking to me through him, because he loves me too. And also just, he suffers when I suffer. So I need to make sure I'm not causing him unnecessary suffering. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh,
Congrats to both Stacey and
Wow.
Eseni on your soon forthcoming publications. I'm going
praise
to
the
be eagerly
Lord.
watching for them both.
Praise the Lord.
God is
Yeah, me too. I'm excited
amazing.
to read both of them. That's
Yeah,
really
you're sending us
Me
all copies, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
of
Done.
course.
Yeah,
What?
sign
Oh my
it.
God.
Put it in the mail.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like
Yeah.
this is like, I'm
We
just
have
so
to put this out here
refreshed.
for our 15 year. We're gonna do the reunion in person, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
good.
And
I
we have
love
to do it
that.
like all the big companies do, like, oh, we have to have our meeting in Hawaii.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I,
All we got to do is pray for it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
I
Yeah.
was gonna say
Claire,
what
you're
Sam
on
was
it.
saying about the house. Like, I
Ask
feel
your
like if
husband.
that's not selling like Catholicism to people, like with the housing crisis, it's like become a Catholic. You could simply pray for a home, and like that just might
Yes.
convert people right there. I mean,
That's how
would
we
have
found
converted
ours
me.
too. St. Joseph
Pray.
Novena. We
St. Joseph's,
Yes.
Prayer is
yeah.
powerful.
After the
Actually,
Lord himself, St. Joe's got some big guns.
I will put a link. I'm going to put a link in the show notes and I'll send you guys all. Remind me if I forget. The St. Joseph's Cloak Novena. Is that the one you're talking about, Christy?
Oh, I don't know. What's
It's
the cloak
actually,
novena?
it's so serious. It's 30 days long and it takes 20 minutes a day to
Okay.
pray. And we prayed it
Wow.
because we
Yeah,
were,
link that.
and we prayed it when we were looking for our land because the interest rates were skyrocketing, and our city is the fastest growing city in Virginia because all the people from DC are moving out here. So the competition is insane. And we kind of
Yeah.
like proved to ourselves as we were praying to St. Joseph that we actually like really, really wanted this land, because you can't do it for 30 days and never miss a day and like not be serious about it. Like you have to. It's so I'll leave a link because part of when you
That's
pray
some
it,
skin in the
Yeah.
game.
Yes.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Oh my God, this is so exciting. Like this is
So
what I
cool.
mean. Like when you're aligned and just aligned with God, like everything that we're all talking about is alignment. Like the whole having a land and farm and children, everything. And what I wanted to ask you, Stacey, are you aware of Danville, Virginia? Like, does that sound
I've heard
familiar?
of it. I think it's an hour or so from me. Do you
Oh,
have a
okay.
connection
Yeah.
there?
My God, yes. So we hold meditation and health and what like everything that me and my wife we do is all in the health and wellness space. So she leads meditation as well, yoga, just the most beautiful experience that I have to say that is so needed for the world. And just listening to you, like this is everything that we talk about, and creating retreat centers, so that we can come along. There are people, who need a safe space, who are going through, whether it's like the situation that Claire's going through, where we're talking about herbs, like just different ways of healing, and showing up for each other. Like I've learned to not put everything in one basket, and just doing more research. What else is out there, and how can we help each other within our community? So everything that you guys were saying, I'm already like gonna have a conversation with my wife as soon as we get off. I'm like, okay, so what herbs does Stacey need? What herbs does Claire need for this? And because I've learned that a lot of what they consider disease is dis-ease, everything is metaphysical first. So now it's like learning to tap into like what that metaphysical reasoning is that you have yet to face, because sometimes it's right there but we don't even see it. And so once we tap in, it's just gonna be amazing. Like I'm excited, and this makes me want to connect more with you ladies. I don't want to say girls, I'm like, because we're grown now, but
I know.
Deep down we're still like girls. But
Amen.
like this
Women.
makes me, yes, we're
Yes.
women, girl women. And like this makes me want to connect more, and and because I feel like we've elevated in so many ways, and I feel like just based on our conversations, I feel like I want to show up more. Like I want to be able to like, okay, this is what I know, and I want to share, because everything is about sharing too. It doesn't cost a lot to share. It just doesn't cost a lot.
I agree.
And
Yes.
healing is beautiful to me.
Absolutely. Oh, ladies, thank you so much. I'm gonna have to jet really soon because I hear my husband doing bedtime by himself, and God bless him. He's a good man. Claire, did you want to say something?
Oh, I just want to let you all know that this morning, because today is Christ the King, the solemnity, which I love, but Mass this morning was and Holy Communion was particularly for each one of you.
Thank you.
And I was going to say, I'm sorry I have to run too, because I actually have a virtual Vespers with consecrated virgins from around the country in honor of Christ the King that I'm going to be hopping off this Zoom call and onto that one to lead chanted Vespers, which is evening prayer for those who might not be familiar with the term. So
I love that. Well, please continue to pray for us, Claire, and thank you for the prayers this morning. And I will be praying for each of you. I've been praying for our conversation. What do the kids do? This thing?
I'm like, there's a new one.
I'm perfecting it right now.
Yeah.
It took me so long to figure out how to do that.
Wait,
I like this one.
Is it really your fingers are this way?
This is our new thing. This is our new thing.
This is replacing sometimes you're dressed, sometimes you're undressed, but either way, here you are.
I still have that above my dresser in my bedroom right now. It is the best.
I gotta say this. I was at the National Eucharistic Congress this summer, which was phenomenal and powerful experience. But I actually saw both the Carmelites there and the Sisters of St. Joseph the Worker. In fact, like the first person I saw when I arrived, unloading the booth to help the consecrated virgins with their booth in the vocations area was Mother Christina from the Sisters of St. Joseph.
Oh my God.
Anyway, they of course they asked about all of you, and they just are as bubbly and joy filled and in love with the Lord as ever. It was really special.
They're so beautiful. I know they're always at the conferences. I've seen them a number of times. I love them. Oh, I really do have to go. I'm sorry. I want to just keep catching up, but I will do this again. I love you guys.
Absolutely. We love you. I love you, girls.
Bye. God bless you.